loves you for who you are. And it's in your precious and holy name that I pray. Amen. Amen. Y'all can grab a seat.
All of human history, the faith of Elijah and Elisha stands out. Elijah rebuked kings, caused a drought, raised the dead, called down fire and rain, split the Jordan River, 16 miracles in all. Just when you thought you'd seen every miracle, God swept him up and he never tasted death. The mantle was then passed, the portion was then doubled, and Elijah's 16 became Elisha's 32. And these were just ordinary men like us.
How's it going? Good. All right. We're going to dive right in because we got a good bit of ground to cover. So this week we're going to be, actually, I have one thing that I have to let you know about. I forgot. So you guys have heard us talk about Safe Nights. So Safe Nights is basically, the way that it works is it's basically a volunteer-led, or at least volunteer-supplied a homeless shelter that travels around from church to church in the county, and it provides the homeless with a place to stay when it's cold. And so we're picking up the last week of the season for Safe Nights, and you guys have done an amazing job filling out all the volunteer slots and everything else. We have one need left. It's the overnight monitors. So the way that this works is it's pretty much volunteer-led, so they need at least one male and one female to spend the night with the clients at the church. And so that's the only need that's the main need we have left to fill. And so I know it's a big ask, and I understand all of that, but if you happen to feel led to do that, or if you happen to have the time, if you're like, hey, I don't sleep anyway, whatever. And you'd be able to do that. If you could just check out the table right outside this door over here, there's a sign-up sheet and everything else. And look, it would be a blessing to the crew leading that if you have a night that you could fill. And there's a really comfy couch in the office. Like I took a nap on it once, so maybe you don't want to take a nap on it now, but. Anyway, you can bring an air mattress, whatever. You're going to spend most of the night sleeping, but you just take care of anything that the clients might need when they're here. So, you guys feeling good? Now we're going to dive right in. So, 1 Kings chapter 19. Let me get you up to speed, though. So, we're talking about this guy named Elijah, and essentially we're going to spend the next 6 or 7 weeks talking about Elijah and then Elisha. And so last week we talked about Elijah as well. We're going to kind of go chronologically, but we're going to be skipping over a big part of the story. So if you remember last week, Elijah walks up to the king and he goes, God told me to tell you it's not going to rain until I say so. And it's super awkward because if somebody told you they controlled the rain, you'd be like, yeah, you call the police, right? And that's kind of the whole thing. But it doesn't rain. And so there's famine in the land. There's no rain. It's a problem. It's a big deal, right? So Elijah ends up being blamed. He ends up being blamed by the king and the king's wife Jezebel. So you got Ahab and Jezebel. They're the villains in the story. Elijah's the hero from our perspective, right? And so Elijah gets blamed for the rain not happening, and it gets to a point where there's this standoff. Right? And look, I know I'm skipping over a ton of detail. If you want to read it, it's 1 Kings 18. So there's this standoff at Mount Carmel. And the way that this works is essentially you have the prophets and priests of Baal, and then you have Elijah, the prophet of the God of Israel, the prophet of Yahweh, right? And so the way that this works is whichever God will send fire down from heaven and consume the offering is the one true God. That's the real God. And it's just this high stakes deal. And so the prophets of Baal build an altar, right? Prophets of Baal build an altar and they put a cow on it, and they're trying to get Baal to send down fire from heaven to consume this offering, and they're dancing. And they're singing, they're chanting, they're cutting themselves. They're doing all kinds of crazy stuff. They're pulling out all the stops, their normal rituals, how they worship. They're doing everything they can, being super demonstrative, right? And it's not working. And Elijah has one of my favorite moments in the whole Bible. He looks at them and goes, yell louder. He's probably pooping. That's pretty much the way that he said it. So that happens, and basically Baal does, nothing happens, right? Nothing happens. And so then Elijah, he builds this altar, and he puts the calf on it, and then they soak the entire altar down with water, and then they dig a trench, and they fill the trench with water. So he's, not only has he taunted them, if God shows up and does what he's supposed to do, he's rubbing it in. He's running the score up. This is not going to be a field goal win. This is going to be 55-3. That's what he's going for, right? And so they do the whole thing. They got the water, everything, and Elijah just sits down and prays a simple prayer. God sends fire from heaven, takes the whole thing up, and then chaos breaks out. Number one, Elijah is empowered by God to kill all the prophets of Baal. I don't suggest that you say God sent you to do that now. It's a little different. It's the Old Testament. You just keep that in mind. But he kills all the prophets of Baal, right? And then a storm cloud is on the horizon. And so Elijah has to get back into town. He starts running. Turns out now he's turned into the Flash, and he is outrunning the king's chariot on his own 2 feet. And then it starts raining, and rain finally comes back to the land, and everybody's better. Why? Well, because the prophets of Baal are gone, and the one true God has proven himself, right? And so things can start to become better and more normal. So where we pick up is after these events. You got to keep in mind, this is for what prophets in the Old Testament do. Elijah just did the greatest. For what prophets in the Old Testament do, Elijah is the man, right? Like some of these prophets in the Old Testament say a lot of things like Elijah said them, but that's all they do is they say, they talk, they write, they speak for God. Elijah not only did that, but he also conquered the foe that he was sent to speak out against. It's like Elijah, after this moment, is considered one of the greatest prophets in all of the history of Israel. Elijah is the man. Now we pick up in 1 Kings chapter 19. Now Ahab told Jezebel everything Elijah had done and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. So Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah to say, "May the gods deal with me, be it ever so severely, if by this time tomorrow I do not make your life like that of one of them." Elijah was afraid and ran for his life. He came to Beersheba in Judah. He left a servant there while he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness. He came to a broom bush and sat down under it and prayed that he might die. "I've had enough, Lord," he said. "Take my life. I'm no better than my ancestors." So just a real quick note here. First thing is he walks into the desert alone after being exhausted, after all of this stuff. And you'll find out in a minute he's got no food, no water. Elijah didn't just go into the desert to pray that God would kill him. He went into the desert to die. And here's the other thing that's interesting. He says, "Take my life, Lord. I have nothing left. I'm no better than my ancestors." Keep in mind, an entire generation of his ancestors died wandering in that desert under the leadership of Moses. He's just saying, like, I'm no better than them. I'm just as lost, and I came here to die. All right, so let's keep moving. He fell asleep. All at once, an angel touched him and said, "Get up and eat." He looked around, and there by his head was some bread baked over hot coals and a jar of water. He ate and drank and then lay down again. The angel of the Lord came back a second time and touched him and said, "Get up and eat, for the journey is too much for you." So he got up and ate and drank. Strengthened by that food, he traveled 40 days and 40 nights until he reached Horeb, the mountain of God. There he went into a cave and spent the night. And the word of the Lord came to him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He replied, "I have been very zealous for the Lord God Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, torn down your altars, put your prophets to death with the sword. I'm the only one left, and now they're trying to kill me too." The Lord said, "Go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by." Then a great and powerful wind tore the mountains apart and shattered the rocks before the Lord, but the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake, but the Lord wasn't in the earthquake. After the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. After the fire was a gentle whisper. When Elijah heard it, he pulled his cloak over his face and went out and stood at the mouth of the cave. Then a voice said to him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He replied, "I've been very zealous for the Lord God Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, torn down your altars, and put your prophets to death with the sword. I'm the only one left, and now they're trying to kill me too." The Lord said to him, "Go back the way you came and go to the desert of Damascus. When you get there, anoint Hazael king over Aram. Also anoint Jehu, son of Nimshi, king over Israel, and anoint Elisha, son of Shaphat, from Abel-Meholah, to succeed you as prophet. Jehu will put to death any who escape the sword of Hazael. Elisha will put to death any who escape the sword of Jehu. Yet I reserve 7,000 in Israel, all whose knees have not bowed down to Baal and whose mouths have not kissed him." So, this is what I want to do with this story. I want to walk through this story and make it more human, right? What you're dealing with a lot of times when you read stories like this is you're dealing with your own bias to try to make it sound more formal. And we'll get to this a little bit later, but I think more often than not, when we read the Bible, when we talk to God, when we do all of this stuff, for whatever reason, we feel like it needs to be dignified and formal. And, and like God wants to have a relationship with you, but you talk to him like he's your kindergarten teacher. You know what I mean? Like, "Dear, please, Mr. God, if you could." And I think we do that, but I think we also do that when we read the Bible, because the Bible's not written for character development. The Bible's not written for any of these things. The Bible's written to be informational. And so I get it, but a lot of times we don't put real feelings on it. So I'd like to go back through this and track through it and translate it to normal day. Is that all right? All right, we'll take it. So it starts out, you got to remember, Elijah has just had the greatest day of his career. He's just had the greatest day of his career. Elijah is the man. Okay, you got to remember, ancient times, he's a prophet, all of this stuff. Like, this dude just did a heroic deed. And on top of that, like, he's the most macho man in town. He took out 400 dudes by himself. God sent fire from heaven, boom. So, like, God listens to Elijah, and he's just the man. You know what I mean? And then, to top it all off, the dude ran like 40 miles an hour in sandals. It's a great day, right? It's like Usain Bolt with leather sandals. And so it's a great day. He's coming off of this high. And then it's ruined because this crazy lady wants to kill him. He gets a call. Modern day, right? He gets a cell phone call. He gets word she's going to try to kill you. She said that if I don't kill you, I hope the gods kill me. And he freaks out. You can imagine, like, when we read this, when we look at this, like, we think, like, that's so amazing. But here's the thing. The whole nation of Israel has been worshiping the god Baal, not the God of Israel, not our God, not Yahweh. They've been worshiping at the altar of Baal. He killed all the prophets. And then the lady who's really running the show told him she was going to have him killed. So now, when we look at it from our perspective, we think he's the man. But actually, here's what happened. He stood up for what God wanted. He killed all the prophets, and he cut the whole nation off from the God that they worshiped. He's a villain. And now, not only does he feel like the odd man out, not only does he feel like all the prophets are gone, not only does he feel all alone, this lady is going to try to kill me, so he runs away. And he gets into the desert, and he stops in this town, and he looks at his assistant and just says, just leave. Just leave me, I'm going to go. I just need a minute. Anybody ever said that? I just need a minute? Usually when you say, I just need a minute, you're going to hide. So he walks off into the desert by himself. Imagine this. The man walks off into the wilderness by himself, no one with him, obviously no food or water. He's walking in there to die. And so that's what happens. And he's exhausted because he just ran 40 miles an hour in sandals. And so he lays down under a bush and he falls asleep, he falls asleep, and then he talks to God, and he just says, God, just kill me. Just let it be over. I have nothing left to give. Just let it be over. And God, in his grace and his understanding, God sends an angel and just wakes him up. Doesn't say anything, just wakes him up. There's food. He eats. This is how tired he is. He just falls back asleep. So the angel comes again, wakes him up, and says, get up, eat, because you're too weak for the journey. Even when I don't want him to, even when I'm pushing him away, my God will always find a way to feed me. My God feeds me. I'm not saying, maybe you've just had a really bad night and you woke up to like a PB&J on the pillow or something. Like, I don't know. It was probably your husband or your wife. But I'm not saying that God's going to do that for you. You're not going to be in a place. You live in America. Like, we throw food away. Like, there's probably not access to a desert where you can't find something to eat here. Like, you know what I mean? And like, if there is, that's fine. You hop in a car and go to the 7-Eleven down the road. Like, it's probably not going to be that. But spiritually, emotionally, physically, when you're just spent, there are times you probably haven't even noticed yet. You probably don't. There are probably things that God has done to feed you, to sustain you, to lift you up that you haven't even given him credit for because you just didn't see it. Think about this. This is going to sound crazy, but Elijah already has been fed by ravens in the wilderness. Do you really think that when that bread just showed up, he even asked a question? Like, how often do we lose sight of what God's doing for us because it's become commonplace? So he eats, and then he walks and walks and walks and walks, 40 days, 40 nights. So I'm assuming that God's continuing to feed him on the journey. Pretty safe assumption. And he gets to Mount Horeb, and he climbs into a cave. And God says, what are you doing here, Elijah? Why are you here? Why are you hiding? Elijah's response, I've done everything that you asked me to do. I've been very zealous for the Lord God Almighty. I've done everything you asked me to do. I've done crazy stuff for you. I told the king that it wouldn't rain unless I said so. Do you know how bonkers I sounded? And I still did it. I killed 400 dudes. I ran 40 miles an hour. I've done everything you asked me to do. But still, you let those people kill all of my friends. All of the people doing the work that I was doing, you let them fall apart. You let them die. And now they're trying to kill me too. Why don't you just let them kill me too? God's response, walk out of the cave. I'm gonna walk by. So he walks out of the cave. And then God sends a wind, tears up all the trees and tears up the mountain. Elijah must have thought that he was getting what he was asking for. Do you realize that the 3 natural disasters that they call out here are the 3 natural disasters that you don't want to experience when you're in a cave? Wind that's going to knock down all the trees and boulders and block the front of the cave. An earthquake that could cause it to collapse on you. And fire that could literally use all of the oxygen and leave you suffocated, or you just catch on fire. These are not things that you want to happen when you're in a cave. Elijah walks out to the mouth of the cave, and with everything that God does, he must think, I'm getting my wish, it's all going to be better. And he doesn't. He survives it all. And then quietly, God's voice says, what are you doing here? And Elijah says the same thing, but you have to imagine he says it differently because he realizes what's about to happen. I'm here because I've done everything you asked me to do. And I've watched you allow all of my friends to die. And now they want to kill me too. So I'm hiding. That's why I'm here. Because I don't have anybody to go back to. I don't have anything left to fight for. There are no battles I can win. So I'm here in this cave, and I'm hoping you'll let the next earthquake kill me. That's why I'm here. And God says, nah, there's still more work to do. So this is what I want you to do. Hold on. The second point is my God sees me. In all of Elijah's upset and brokenness and everything, God met him where he was at. God saw through Elijah's anger to see the hurt and the pain and the disillusion and the lack of purpose and the confusion and the craziness. He reached down into the darkness and pulled Elijah up. So my God feeds me. My God sees me. And then the coolest part of the whole story to me is that God just makes a turn. He sees where Elijah's at. He understands how Elijah's feeling. He's taken the time. See, this is the thing. All right, I think a lot of times we assume that God doesn't take the time to understand where we are. He doesn't even have to take the time to understand where we are because he's God, so he knew it already. You know what I mean? But like we process it that way. And we assume that God's not going to take the time to understand where we are, to see us in our hurt, to see us in our pain, and all of this stuff, because most of the people around us don't take the time to see it either. Like you walk into this church today, and I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus. This is how polite society functions. You could have had a horrible morning. Right? And then you roll up in here and you walk in and you brought the kids in and somebody says, how'd it go? Or how are you? Not how to go. How are you? How are you feeling? And you go, I'm good. I'm good. It's good to see you. Meanwhile, what actually happened is one kid pooped their pants on the way here. It's all the way up their back. The other kid had a donut that you gave them, and now there's jelly and powdered sugar everywhere. And then you screamed at them the whole way here. Right? You're walking in saying, I'm good, but there's poop on your arm. There's jelly on your kid's pants. You have to get the whole car fixed. Oh, I'm good. I'm good. It's fine. Right? And that's what we expect. That's how we expect people to see us. You're at work. You have a supervisor. Your supervisor can tell something's off and can tell that you're not quite right. But instead of going, hey, how are you feeling? They're like, hey, get it together. There's work to do. I don't care how you're feeling. There's work to do. I'm just saying, like that's your kids. Your kids don't care how you feel. They just want you to fix their dinner. Right? Like this is what we come to expect. So this is what we come to expect from God because we're so surrounded by it. And it's not that anybody's a bad person. It's just this is how we function in society, right? So we just think God's just going to act like one of us. But at the end of the day, God's God. And so what happens here is God sees what's happening to Elijah and he goes, this is the problem. My man's been alone for over a month. He's exhausted. He's tired. He's alone. He's lost his sense of purpose. So what's God's answer to Elijah? Elijah, this isn't over. First thing I need you to do, you're going to go to this guy. His name's Hazael. You're going to anoint him king. Two things just happened. God gave him purpose and a new friend. Then you're going to go and you're going to go to this guy named Jehu and you're going to anoint him king. God just gave him purpose and another new friend. Then you're going to go to this guy. His name's Elisha. He's going to succeed you. And so you're going to go to him, you're going to anoint him, and he's going to follow you, and you're going to teach him how to do what you do. Now he's given him purpose, a new friend, and a future. And then on top of that, you need to know there are 7,000 people in this country that have not bowed to Baal and have not kissed his statue. Those people I've reserved. It's okay. You're not alone. You're not universally hated. So now he's got friends, He's got purpose. He's got a future. And he has a community. My God also leads me. I'm sure that there are so let me just go this route. So this sermon was written in 2017. I don't often preach sermons twice because I feel like, a new day deserves a new revelation from God kind of thing, a new teaching kind of thing. But this one I wrote in 2017, and I don't know, I liked it, and we were writing, and it came in to the picture. We decided to do it again. So when I wrote this, you may have noticed all of the points are personal. My God feeds me. My God sees me. My God leads me. So when I wrote this in 2017, I wrote this in August of 2017. So it was a year and 2 months after I just got married. And this is what you got to understand about that time period. First of all, right before we got married, Amanda got a new job at the hospital. So she was working, and for the first couple of months, she was on day shift. So by the time we actually got married, we were living together, she was just switching to night shift. So our whole first year of marriage, she's on night shift. The other thing is, I got a new job during that time period. And so I went from being the idiot youth pastor who tried to come up with gross games that would make all the kids laugh, to being the campus pastor that would play to campus. So I had to go from you're going to jug a half gallon of eggnog and we're all going to laugh at you, to leading adults that probably would never, and the eggnog was safe eggnog. It wasn't alcoholic. But to leading adults who would never even think of doing that. And that was a big growing pains, a lot of growing pains there. And then we, on top of all of that, Amanda and I, just ships in the night, man. Just barely seeing each other. First year of marriage, I pretty much acted like I was single the whole time. To the point that it took me probably 2 years after that to stop doing things that I had done when I was single. And I would hear, you just keep acting like you're all by yourself and it's just you. And I'm it was bad, And then, so I would go to the gym after work and then not get home till late and never tell Amanda where I was at or what I was doing or just whatever, Because the 4 nights out of the week, she wasn't there. On top of that, we had some health issues, all this. It just turned into this really dark, uncomfortable time. And then from there, things, I don't know, I never came out of it. I stayed in that place. Just stayed in that place. And we went through a transitional period at the church, and I didn't know how to handle it. It was hard. It was just a hard time. Dumb stuff would cause huge problems. We changed the logo, and next thing you know, we're not Christians anymore. Stuff like that, angry emails, God sent a windstorm to blow a limb through your new sign because he's mad you took the cross out of the logo. And it's we just got a list of 5 logos, and we thought that one looked the best. I don't know, sorry. And just dumb stuff like that would cause huge problems. And then we were going through transitions, and I got friends leaving, and I'm just messed up. I don't know what to do, and I'm just feeling lost. And on top of that, I'm feeling a little victimized. And so I've gone through all of that, and then to top all of that off, Amanda and I never really synced up our schedules early on. We never figured out how to do stuff together. And, we'd go on dates and we'd do all of this stuff, but then, she'd go to bed at 11. I'd be up to 3 in the morning, and, I'm just a mess, and I just stayed depressed, and I'm gaining weight. So now on top of all that, I don't want to look at myself. And it all came to a head it started to come to a head. There was a turning point, but it came to a head in this moment where we were living at my parents' house. We had just sold our house. Literally, this is a 3-year stretch where I was just a trash human being and depressed. All right. And so we're living in my parents' house. We live in the basement. I've done the full millennial. I've left. I've come back. I'm living for free. it's a mess, and we're down there, and I started complaining, and Amanda finally just turned, and she looked at me, and she said, "You always make yourself the victim, and I'm sick of listening to you talk like this." And I went, my first reaction was like, who are you talking to? And then I thought about it for a minute. It was so, honestly, it was so blunt and mean that it caught me off guard. And I turned and I looked at her and I said, you're right. I feel like a victim right now. I've never said those words in my life because I always thought to myself, you'd never be that person. You can't move forward if somebody's always doing you wrong. You can't do great things if somebody's always doing you wrong. And I just got to this place where I just decided everybody was doing me wrong. And she called me out on it. All along the way, as all of this is going down, there are moments and there are times where God's giving me a loaf of bread here, a loaf of bread there. Spiritually, I'm being held up. I'm being sustained. It's okay. Is it all easy? Is it all perfect? Am I getting better? No. But am I dying? No. He's feeding my soul through this whole time. And then in this moment, he gave my wife the insight to be able to say to me exactly what I needed. He saw my hurts. He saw my pains. He saw where I was at. He saw the hole I was in. And he gave her the insight to be able to say something in this moment that was, there we go. That was life-changing. That was helpful. And so that happens, and things start to get a little better. At least my thinking's a little better. It's just a little bit more. But I'm still not right. Like, I'm not going to lie to you. That next year is a year from that conversation, about a year or a few months, or 6 months or so, from that conversation to when Nora was born. And in that time period, I'm not telling you I was better. I'm telling you it was getting better. I was still messed up. Like, I would still, like, no lie. Like, in that time period, my job had transitioned, and I didn't have Sunday morning responsibilities. So like, there were certain things like Saturday night service I might skip to watch college football, but really I was skipping so I could be alone. Or like, I might do something, I might say I might be at the gym, but I didn't really work out all that hard or at all. I'm listening to a podcast. Why? So I can be alone. I'm still hiding because I'm afraid of being hurt, but I'm not blaming everybody for all my problems. And then, and so I'm not quite healthy yet. And then Nora was born. And, God saw what I needed. So I told you, Amanda's a night owl, but not the same as me. I'm the kind of person that can literally stay up till 3 a.m. and sleep till noon. Don't judge me. But I can revert to 12-year-old sleep patterns in a heartbeat, no problem. And so, like, that's how I am. And so Nora was born. Amanda experienced some postpartum blood loss. And so she couldn't really do a whole lot. And she, like, the first week, she could barely walk up the stairs. And so I had this baby at night. And, God blessed me with a baby that didn't sleep. So I had a baby that would hang out with me and watch movies with me. And I wasn't alone anymore. I should have been with my wife the whole time, but I was too dumb, right? And I wasn't alone anymore. And then it got to the point a couple months in where, like, when I thought about her not falling asleep in my arms, I would weep because God used her to tell me I wasn't by myself. And like I said, I should have known. My wife was there the whole time. I'm just a moron. And he led me out of my hole. He led me out of my hole. I mean, I'm telling you guys, I dug this hole for myself for 3 years. And he led me out of my hole with this little girl that that screamed at night. But then she started sleeping well. And then we started falling asleep on the couch watching action movies. She's seen more people die in action movies and heard more cuss words than she should have at that age. But she can't remember. She was like 6 months old. She watched all the Fast and Furious movies. She's definitely going to have a bottomed out Civic one day. So, we did that together. What I'm telling you is, at the time when I wrote this sermon, God was using it to start speaking to me. And now, 5 years later, I'm on the other side of it, and I can tell you, if you don't believe that he feeds you when you're weak, if you don't believe that he gives you something to keep you going, it's not because he didn't, it's because you missed it. I can tell you that if you feel alone, if you feel like nobody understands, if you feel like God doesn't care, it's not because he doesn't see you, it's because you don't see him. And if you feel like you have no direction, if you feel like everything you do is pointless, if you feel like you're never going to be able to dig yourself out of this hole and like it's a mess and all of that and it's just not ever going to get better. It may not be better today, it may not be better tomorrow, but he is leading you out. And if you can trust that he will feed you, if you can trust that he will see you, then you will allow him to lead you. It takes time. It's not perfect. It's not easy. It's not automatic. Like a lot of times what we want from God is we want God to swoop in and be the superhero and save the day. We want God to come in and just like, God, I'm feeling terrible. And God just show up like, dunk, I'm here. What do you need? And then solve the problem. That's never going to be how it is. That's never going to be how it is, because in this relationship, what is required of you is faith. It's really easy. There's no faith required when Superman just shows up in his cape. You have to have faith, but if you will have faith, he will lead you out. And it's better for you anyway. Because let me tell you something. Holiness is found in the process. Joy is found in the process. Purpose is found in the process. Peace is cultivated in the process. You're never going to be able to have peace if you've never been through nothing. What were whole, completeness, the sermon we were writing this week, Ephesians, it's Corinthians, 1 Corinthians 13. At the end, Paul says, now we see in part, we prophesy in part, we heal in part, but one day we will see in whole, we'll see the whole picture, right? And then at the end of it, the greatest of these is love. Faith, hope, and love, the greatest of these is love. What Paul's saying in that passage, in that scripture, your perspective's messed up. Your perspective's not right. It never can be right. It never can be right. What God does when he takes us on the journey, what God does when he's leading us through things, when we go into these holes, when we get into these dark spots and he leads us out, each time he does that, each time he requires faith of you, he's giving you just a little bit fuller perspective. He's letting you see just a little bit more. He's letting you understand just a little bit more. If we don't trust him to feed us, if we don't trust that he sees us, if we don't trust him to lead us, our perspective always stays incomplete. We always act like children. We always need what children need. And we never become the full, whole men and women of God that we were supposed to be, because maturity is built in the process. if there's anything you take from it today, I would just say this. No matter where you're at in that process, it'll be better if you trust him. If you're here today and you never believed him in it at all, or you think this is all crazy, I'm just telling you, I've been there, I've seen it, I've experienced it, it's real. And if you don't trust me, ask anybody else in this room. It's real. Wherever you're at in the process, trust him, because on the other side, you'll be a little bit more complete. You'll be a little bit more whole. You'll have a little bit better perspective. You'll be a little bit more like Jesus. Can I pray for you? Oh, God, we thank you for meeting us where we're at. And we thank you for being patient with us, even when we don't understand what you're doing. We thank you for the fact that even though we get bitter, or we get angry, or we get lost, or we get confused, or we get whatever, you're still faithful in everything you do. So Lord, what I ask today is that we all have perspective. We all have perspective to see you, that you will correct our vision so that we can see you and see what you're doing in our lives. And Lord, if it's too foggy and it's too messy and maybe we can't see what you're doing in our lives right now, God, I pray that you would reveal to each one of us what you've done in our lives in the past. I pray that you'd allow us to look back and see the big things you've done that seemed small at the time. I pray that you'd allow us to look back and see how faithful you've been so we can continue to be faithful moving forward. And God, I just pray that you would continue to do the work that you're doing in us to make us more whole, to make us more complete, to make us more like you. And I pray you give us faith to trust the process.